All right, what's up, everybody? It's BallietBran. Today we got a very special live stream. We're going to be covering, just a handful of topics, but also have a special guest if you haven't seen in the title already. So we're going to be having on Timothy Benjamin. He's a OG Hexican, and he's been on a handful of live streams before, even maybe my own with just a whole bunch of other people. But this will be the first time that it's just myself and him. So we're going to hear more about his story and just talk about some of the recent HEX updates, right? We got a live stream that Richard Hart had today recently, just a couple hours ago. We've got the price of HEX pumping, which is obviously awesome since last week. And yeah, we'll bring him on in just a minute here. Let me just start the intro real quick and we'll bring him on in just a minute.
Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, be sure to share, be sure to comment. Yeah. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, yeah. Say hey. Hey, yeah. Say hey, hey. Hey, yeah. Say hey. Say hey, yeah. Say hey. Motherfucking jackpot. We still jackpot, bitch!
Thank you, Richard, for creating and founding the most amazing and disruptive financial technology cryptocurrency ever. Thank you, sir. And nice streams, Mr. BallietBran.
Okay, so without further ado, we got Timothy Benjamin. How are we doing, Tim?
Very well. How are you doing, Bran?
Hey, doing pretty good, man. Thank you for joining. Like I said, we got the HEX price doing well. I know we were chatting a little bit before the stream started, and yeah, thanks for being able to make some time and do this. I always like doing the one-on-one streams with the Hexicans. You get to find out a little bit more about their story and just see how they're doing overall.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Fellow Day One OG. We've been talking about this for a long time, and I'm just really happy that it's all coming together. So glad to be here.
Yeah, man, it's cool. I know, I think you said you were going to be joining in Vegas, right?
Oh, absolutely. Counting down the days, man.
That's cool, man. Me too. Yeah, it's super exciting. I mean, we've got the stream that Richard did today, and I know the last stream he did that was like a minute and 30 something seconds long with the vest. He had kind of mentioned like it could be as soon as a week, and now that they've got ridden of the Ethereum bug and some of these other tweaks a little bit fixed, I think it should be sometime next week, hopefully, right? With the fingers crossed with the most recent news.
Yeah, I don't know what is involved with addressing the final things that he had talked about on the stream earlier that he wants to get resolved before the sacrifice starts. I don't know what kind of work that's going to entail. It really doesn't matter to me. In a way, it's relative because of just, my HEX stack is sufficient as it is. Just as soon as I could start getting cheap fees again, I could start staking again and start onboarding new people. That's really the only thing that matters to me at this point.
Totally, man. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I know a lot of people were, and they still are, right? Like they've got a lot of anticipation for when it's going to start. And, one of the guys in the PulseChain com Telegram was like, yeah, man, when's it going to start? And, sure, there's a lot of excitement, but for me, it's like, yeah, man, if you're going to participate, you should probably have your stack liquid and ready now for the sacrifice and kind of just expect it to be tomorrow, or like as soon as possible. Just be as prepared as you can. And like you mentioned, that's really all you have control over.
Yeah, really, for me, the only thing that would cause me to feel any sense of anticipation is the having like if you have a stake that's due and you would rather wait for Pulse to launch so you can end that stake without having to pay the high Ethereum gas fee, that would cause me to have some anticipation watching a stake bleed out. But fortunately, I'm not in that situation right now. I do know somebody that I onboarded who is on the verge of being in that situation. So for that person, I kind of feel for them, but they're not even aware of that at the moment, because I feel like I'm doing more to manage their account than they are. But anyway, that's the only thing I can see as an issue of anticipation.
Right. No, that is very true. I mean, and the cool thing that you mentioned is since the copy is going to be of the Ethereum system state, like if you had a stake that was due right now and maybe it was bleeding a little bit, maybe it's bled out 1% already. Well, you might just want to, instead of paying the super high penalty right now, you might want to wait until that does get copied over maybe to the Pulse chain and then just end it over there. But to your point, I mean, the beautiful thing about Pulse chain is it's going to be kind of like a opportunity to get in on the ground floor of Ethereum when that happened in 2013 and when it was pending. Sure. And so it's kind of like rewinding the clock back, except now the worldview has been updated. The Ethereum system state is pretty full, which is why everyone's experiencing a lot of fees and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it'll be cool because this is like the most unique fork that cryptocurrency has seen, right? It's not necessarily designed to like destroy Ethereum, but designed to kind of be a complement. And I think forking over that system state over will kind of alleviate some of the fees that maybe people were doing on Ethereum to maybe go over to Pulse chain and fill up those blocks.
An item of curiosity that I do have. I don't know if you've heard anything on this or if anybody else, but I'm wondering if there's going to be a user interface that will be developed to stake on the Pulse chain. We have the go.hex.com for staking on the ETH chain. I'm wondering if there's going to be a separate user interface and if that interface has been developed yet. I don't know if that's been mentioned in the chat room yet.
Yeah, it has. I know Richard was asked it once on Livestream, and he had mentioned that, with the go.hex.com interface where, right now you just connect the MetaMask. He said it should be as simple as like a one-click toggle where like, maybe not in the MetaMask header, but like maybe in the top right of the screen, it says like, I don't know, Hex to Ethereum, and then maybe, Pulse chain, or like Ethereum chain and then Pulse chain.
Yeah, I'm aware of that change.
Okay.
You can choose different networks in MetaMask. I was just wondering if a whole new interface would have to be designed, or if we could just continue using the go.hex.com on the Pulse chain, or
right.
if a new one would be invented.
No, I think it is the same, but yeah, obviously it's all kind of speculation until it comes out. But sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to maybe, fill in some of the Hexicans that aren't necessarily aware. I mean, I know, like you mentioned, Day One OG and have been around for a while. Can you maybe like catch up some of the people that might not be familiar, like how you got into crypto, how you found Richard Hart, why you participated in Hex, kind of just sure. A little summary of that?
Sure. Well, I first became acquainted with Bitcoin back in 2011. It wasn't any magical thing. I was just cleaning my house and listening to a podcast, and somebody just used a word in a sentence. So I did a Google search and found the white paper and, got hooked on Bitcoin. And the same person who did that podcast years later in 2017 made a tweet about Richard Hart. They said, "Hey, you ought to follow this guy. He seems really smart." So I clicked on the link for Richard's YouTube channel, and that was in like April of 2017. And I've been acquainted with Richard through his media presence ever since. So, I was there when Richard was talking about the development of Bitcoin Hex, which is now Hex. And previous to that, I had been involved in a Bitcoin mining program where you basically you gave them your Bitcoin and they would apparently give you a payback of it, and they ended up taking my money. So that that was a tragedy, but it could have been a lot worse. So I was basically looking for something where I could develop a passive income, essentially. And this thing seemed like the best thing in town at the time. So when Richard started talking about Hex, I was already primed mentally to participate in this. And I knew Richard, just listening to his live streams, that this guy was obviously the smartest man in the room. And if he was going to create a product that would do this, that he would do it right. I just knew that just because I knew him. So I was there all along as it was being developed. So obviously got in day one, but I did not FOMO in day one because Richard said, do not over FOMO on day one. So I was like, okay, I will not over FOMO. I put 1 Ethereum into the adoption amplifier on day one and did that every day for a week. And then I cut it back to like a half of Ethereum and then basically stretched out my ETH bag as far as I could for the adoption amplifier before I just started buying in. But so that's essentially how I got in.
That's awesome. It's cool that you had the foresight and the knowledge and wisdom and not listening to the FOMO to like you mentioned, not go all in on day one, because there definitely sometimes is that anticipation. And Richard had posted the EOS, the 351 day launch phase that they had too. And so yeah, that's awesome that you're one of the people that listened. I mean, the cool thing is everything has gone successfully since then. I know there was FUD since day one, right? Even before that, but the 351 day launch phase worked and Big Payday worked, and those that saw the product for what it was instead of listening to banter about the inventor, they did very well.
Right. The only FUD that actually had any kind of impact on me at all was the fact that I was not aware of like what was going to be the total coin supply of Hex at the beginning. I pretty much expected it to go to like $1 in like a week because I didn't know these metrics. And somebody had said something on Twitter or in a chat somewhere about how, yeah, that adoption amplifier is going to have like a 500 million Hex given away every day. How can you expect that thing to go up in value with all this liquidity everywhere, all these coins? And mathematically, that was a challenge for me at first. And I just knew that Richard knew what he was doing. So I didn't, I didn't allow those numbers to intimidate me, even though I couldn't compute them in my mind at the time as to how that all fits in the big picture. I just got what I could each day and staked it and, went from there. And, it's turned out very well. Definitely no complaints.
Right. No, that's a good point. I mean, similar to the market cap metric that you mentioned, that sometimes, yeah, people just look at the, instead of like why it's designed and why it's developed, they look at some of those other metrics. And yeah, sometimes it's not easy to ration, but then you look at how it was implemented and how everything's been going so far. And yeah, it's doing really well. I know some people that they wanted to speculate on the big payday instead of just like staking through it and kind of receiving the, the bonus, like the 30 to 90% bonus that it was. And some of those people are, if they had done the position of even just staking for that one day, they would have been a lot better. But it goes to show you that Hex is really designed to reward the people that have a longer time frame and that do buy it and lock it and stake it. Because otherwise, sometimes people can listen to their emotions a little bit too much, or maybe it goes up a 1x and they sell, and after that it goes up another 20.
Sure. I was going to say something and I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. Before Hex launched, the motto behind Hex was just stake it till you make it. That was something that was repeated over and over again in the Telegram room. And, that's all I knew at the time. Get whatever Hex you can get that day from the adoption amplifier, or later I started buying it off of Uniswap when that started to become popular. And I would just stake it. For a while, it's like, when I first started, at Hex in the beginning, it's like you were getting like 1 million of them for like 1 Ethereum. And I'm just like, 1 million Hex. I'm like, if this goes to like 50 cents, it's like, that's $500,000. It's like, what am I going to do with all this money? And it's like, I just kept staking it out and out. And it's like, I built a staking ladder for the first year. And I'm like, okay, I got the first year done. Here's another 1 million Hex. What do I do with this? Okay, well, I'll make a bigger staking ladder the next year, and then a bigger one the year after that, and a bigger one the year after that. And then finally, after like 5 years of staking ladders, it's like, now what do I do? Okay, well, I'll just throw them all out 5,555 days. It's like, wow. It's like, staking it till you make it. At that time, Hex, the value of Hex was like a fraction of a penny. And it's like, I'm not making enough interest for this to matter. So I'll just keep getting more instead of holding on to what I have and hoping that it will increase in value. I shared this analogy up in Idaho when I went to a meetup up there. It's like I was just planting seeds every day, and I never stopped to look to see if the trees were growing behind me. And then when I finally did, there's a whole orchard behind me, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of fruit. And
that's a great analogy.
Yeah. And so it's worked out very well. It's like I almost didn't even understand the math involved with calculating my daily payout for the T-shares that I have for like months, because the values were so low, it didn't even seem like it was really worth it. And then when that graph came on the user interface with all those purple dots, and it said on there, it just said right there, this is how many Hex you got per T-share. And I'm like, I wonder how many T-shares I have right now, because I didn't even think to check for like weeks at a time. And then I did the math, and I'm just like, oh my God. Whoa.
It's so true.
This is big.
That data, you're so right. I mean, that data has always been there, but we never saw the GUI, the graphic user interface, change on Hex.com until Big Payday, and you could see the APY and some of these other things. And like you mentioned, I mean, sometimes, at the very beginning of Hex, if you had a few million Hex, great. What good is it doing liquid? Because it's not doing anything. And to your point, you listen to Richard, that's like stake long and strong. And it's like, okay, let's throw out, a million, 15 years, or, a couple 100,000. And you look at those now, and you look at the amount of T-shares that it's accumulated. It's like, holy shit, man. To your point, the power of the compounding interest, the power of cryptographic currency, and being able to program the money, it really is designed to be like a reserve currency and like a store of value. And it's just so cool to see like everything is just working. I mean, I remember, and you can probably relate too, but a lot of us at the beginning, say you have 1 million Hex, and it's like, man, if this thing gets to a penny, you bought it for $80 to $120 per Ethereum. And it's like, if this can get to 1 penny by the end of the year or in a couple of years, that's great. And then we saw the same thing, except it, 2x that. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah. And getting back to the quantity of tokens and how intimidating that was at the beginning, something that helped me get through that was the fact that Richard did say that Hex was designed to onboard the entire world. So it's like there's 7 billion people in this world. So it's like we need a lot of Hex to distribute to the world if the world's going to be onboarded. So, Bitcoiners like to, make a big deal about the fact that there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoins. And, I was wrapped up in that formula for years, and that was a big anchor for me. But, the fact is, and I learned this from listening to Richard, that number is not absolute. That number can be changed through either consensus or through exploitation. So, the point being, as mentioned on Friday night on the Discourse Syndicate, that it's not necessarily the number of tokens available, it's the value. It's how much demand that there is that creates the value. So, if you have 21 million piles of dog crap, who cares? It's like, how much value does dog crap have?
Right. It's very true. I mean, and to your point, a lot of people, they look at those metrics as a supply, but then they don't realize that the actual supply of Hex and liquidity and whatnot, it is the minimum viable liquidity. And a lot of the staking percentage is just hexagons. And the analogy to the De Beers, Diamond Corporation is very similar, where things just like with Bezos or with Elon Musk with Tesla stock, like things that have whales in it that want the best interest of the company or cryptocurrency or product to grow. Those are the people that can really lift the price up. And if you're not able to sell into, like, if the actual Hex itself is so scarce that the holders of it are not wanting to sell until way down the road, then it just makes the value of what's on the supply currently very high.
Yeah. Speaking of De Beers, I didn't even know what the origin address was for like weeks, months. It's just one of those things that didn't matter. People started fudding the fact that there was an origin address, and I'm just like, so, I haven't sold any Hex, and if I was the origin address, I wouldn't sell any Hex either. So it's like, whoever the origin address is, it's like, I relate to that person because I'm in the same boat that they're in. I haven't sold any Hex yet, and I'm glad that it worked out that I haven't had to do that, because at the end of last year, I took a 17-day road trip, and I quit my job at the end of the year, and I was going to live off of Hex from that point on. And when I got back from my road trip, the fact is, my employer at that time, she's a Hexican, thanks to me, and so is her parents, and so is her brother, and we had a little talk, and I basically offered to give her 3 days a week of my time at my discretion to help her wrap up some jobs that we were doing. And she was very appreciative of that, and she gave me a very substantial raise. So basically, I've been able to continue paying for my cost of living working part-time instead of having to sell Hex. So most retired people do work part-time. So I'm just really thankful that all worked out, because after I got back and watched that spike on New Year's Eve from a subway out on an interstate somewhere, I'm just like, I don't want to sell my Hex. I don't want to sell my Hex. And I didn't know what to do about it at the time. But like I said, when I got back from my trip, we talked, and she's increased her bag, and it's just worked out really good.
That's awesome. I've gotten a lot of my my friends, my family members, and people that I know, even some coworkers, that they just saw my interest in it and they wanted to get into Hex themselves. But it's really cool to share with someone the top appreciating asset of 2020. And when you get these like unexpected airdrops, like the Uniswap, the Uni airdrop that we got for Uniswap, per wallet that you had, stuff like that, it's like, man, this really is a different paradigm and a different world that everyone's kind of going to. And so when you're on the right side of history, and when you happen to just be using the right products, you can really do well. And it's cool to not be the only one that reaps those gains, but to, like you mentioned, bring coworkers or bosses and stuff like that on board as well.
Yeah. My employer's brother, he's really good with tools. I basically work in construction. I do handyman work and home improvement type stuff. And my employer's brother, he's a master of all that stuff. And he's also a master mechanic. And he offered to help me do some work on my truck, and he spent about 2 hours on it and didn't charge me anything. So I actually got him 1,000,000 hex from the adoption amplifier. No, take it back. It wasn't 1,000,000 hex. The initial purchase was a little over 300,000, but with the big payday, I staked it for him after big payday. So between his interest and big payday, he got like 1,000,000 hex from me.
Nice.
And I only paid like $100 for those 300,000 hex. And I typed out a letter explaining to him what hex was. And I gave him the seed phrase and told him how to install MetaMask. And basically it was a letter of appreciation for his work. And it's worked out for him very well. Of course, he's wanting to know, when am I going to be able to get this without, getting gouged on fees, but at least he still has his bag. And that's just one example. I also got my brother and his wife a wedding gift. I bought them a bag of hex and did the same thing. I typed out a letter, congratulating them on getting married. And I said, here's a wedding gift for you. And explained all that to him. And when I was back in Pennsylvania over Christmas time, I sat them down and showed them the user interface and showed them hands-on how to work with hex, because they didn't get from my letter the instructions clear enough that they felt confident dealing with it, considering it was money. So, but those are just two examples of how I've given hex to other people for one reason or another. There's others besides that.
It really is a good gift to
is.
people. It's super cool. I mean, thanks to Steph and Firebun for creating the Staker app. I've been able to, with the couple of uni airdrops that I had just extra. It's like, all right, the cup is already overflowing. Let me, use this as an opportunity to gift some hex for Christmas and for their birthdays. And long story short, they download the Staker app, and it's like, they can see the price going up, and they can, refresh and see how much the value of their stakes are going. And that's the other thing too, is I staked it for them. And so some of theirs, I mean, for some, I did like a ladder where it's like, okay, you got some 15-year stakes, 10, 5, and some shorter term ones too, so they can realize how it works. But it's really cool to be able to use that as a gift and let people still get some of the gains, even if they don't understand it when you explain it to them the first time.
Sure. Another example, I just want to throw this out there, and I'm not bragging, but this is the one that really means the most to me. My other brother has 2 daughters, and the one girl, she wanted to learn how to be an auto mechanic, and her mother didn't feel that was very ladylike. She wanted her to be a nurse. And when word got back to me about that, I staked both of the girls' money, that assuming hex goes to $1 by the year like 2023, it would be enough to pay for their college education for both of them. And I wrote my one niece a letter, and I said, look, don't fight with your mom. It's not worth it. You're going to get yourself in trouble. I said, look, I put some money aside for you. I looked at every school in the country that offers a degree in auto mechanics. I said, you can go to any school you want. I said, but if you do decide to do that, I'd like to ask that you learn how to work on Lamborghinis, because I may need some help with one by then. And the irony behind that is, from the time that I wrote that letter until now, it's like, I don't even want a Lamborghini. I want a Tesla. So I need to write her back and tell her to learn how to work on Teslas too.
It's so true. And to your point as well, that sometimes people they think cryptocurrency might be just digital until you are able to pay off your student loan, or until, like you mentioned, 2 years from now, they are able to have that kind of tuition for college and whatnot. And that's the beautiful thing about Hex is sure, you can hold it liquid just like any other cryptocurrency, but you can also stake it and be incentivized to do so. And then also have the price appreciation times the interest that you're getting. And with those two numbers multiplying, it's really cool to see that things like that can be a reality. Yeah.
And, it's actually very encouraging to hear someone of your age talking about this, because the fact is you're much younger than me, and it seems like younger people don't know anything about a savings account. I got my first savings account when I was like 12 years old. And I don't know that kids that are 12 years old today get savings accounts anymore. I had paper routes when I was a kid, and I would save some money for different things. And it just seems like there was a really big shift that started in the 90s where the consumer culture really went into overdrive, and everything was about credit cards and debt. And it was kind of discouraging. And, to see all these years later, something being invented that encourages savings, that rewards savings, and to see younger people grab onto this, it's like, man, you guys got so much potential in front of you. And it's like, you and I, we talked privately about, our bags and stuff. And, when I was your age, those kinds of assets were just way out of, it's like I couldn't even imagine stuff like that unless you were like a celebrity. And, you guys have just an awesome opportunity with your life to do something really spectacular. And it's encouraging to me, man. It's just, I've seen so many people with money just literally kill themselves with it. They just go to Vegas and spend it all on hookers and coke in one weekend. And now they're living with their parents, 15 years later. It's like, what kind of life is that, man?
It's true, man. There's something to say about not only the Hex community, but just as far as you mentioned, kind of leading by example. I mean, the early Bitcoiners and the cypherpunks of 2008, 2009. I mean, Richard got in 2011, and he's kind of like the most OG Bitcoiner that I know, aside from a couple others. But it is really cool to see the Hex community. Yeah, sure, everyone loves the price chart go up and mad gains, but it's also nice that there's more sustainability and more longer term growth. Because when people are locked up for 5,555 days, 15.2 years, you tend to bring in a community that's more longer term thinkers and stuff like this. And to your point, it is nice to just be able to have fun, but also work hard as well and spread the good stuff.
Some of these comments are cracking me up.
Let's say what's
Marcavelli said Bran is a celebrity, and I want to say something about that because I think about this from time to time. It's like if Hex is the new rock and roll, then Richard Hart would be Keith Richards. And I equate different Hexicans with different rock stars. So Richard Hart would definitely be Keith Richards. I'm not sure exactly who you would be yet. I'm thinking about that as we're talking. I would say that Crypto Coffee would probably be Jimmy Page. That's the guitarist for Led Zeppelin. I would have to make a list, but I think that'd be a pretty interesting game.
It's cool. I mean, as we were kind of talking a few minutes before the stream started, I didn't, like, when I joined Hex and when I was following Richard, I never intended on making like videos about it. Even in 2017, when I got into other cryptocurrencies, I was very passionate about what it could do and the technology behind it, but didn't necessarily want to show my face and put my name out there. But then something was different about the Hex community and the stream that RG3 did with the F and Hangout where anyone could join. And so, it's cool to see how many faces there are in Hex and how many people that got a lot of cool stories to share.
There's another comment I saw in the chat from Sharks that said something like, nothing wrong with cocaine and hookers, Tim, everything in its time. When I was in Vegas for my little brother's wedding, he didn't have anything planned for like a bachelor party because it was a small group, not a whole lot of guests there. And so I offered to I had a rental car, so I offered to take my brother out somewhere, the day of his wedding for his quote bachelor party. And he wanted to bring his fiance along. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, so what do you guys want to do? It's like, you want to go to a strip club or something? My brother's like, no, I want to go to an arcade.
Nice.
I'm like, I was giving my brother so much crap about that. It's like, you want to go to an arcade? He's like, don't you give me any lip. Where were you today? I'm like, I was at the public library. He's like, oh, shut up.
No, that's funny, man.
I can't help it. Every city I go to, I always go to the public library at least once during my visit. I did that in Orlando, Las Vegas, everywhere I go. It's the first place I go.
Speaking of Hexican meetups, so I know you've been to like one or a couple. Maybe share some of your experiences. Where did you go, if you don't mind sharing? And
Oh, not at all.
How was the meetups?
Well, the first trip I took, I first went to Pennsylvania to visit with my family, my mom, my brothers, and a friend of mine named Vinny, who's has a sandwich shop there. He's been in crypto before because of me, and he wanted to get into Hex, so I set him up with a stake. And from there, I went to Johnny Chaos's place in Michigan. He's got a studio there where he makes all his videos, and he gave me the grand tour, and we just had a lot of fun together. Johnny reminds me a lot of my brother who got married in Las Vegas.
Oh, nice.
Just they have a lot of the same interests, and so we really connected in that regard. And so then from there, I went over to Chicago and I visited with Crypto Coffee, and that was just really awesome too. And I was really surprised. Crypto Coffee is about your age. He's only a few years older than you, which makes him a lot younger than me. And that really blew me away, because on screen, he just comes across as a much more older person. I think it's his voice. It just, he just strikes me as someone who's older, but we had a great time. And then from there, I drove to Boise, Idaho, and I met up with Hexologist, Seth Mendoza, a guy that goes by the name of Exploring Idaho on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Seth has a brother who goes by the name of Heximus Maximus on Twitter. And then there was another man that has made a video before. He's a Vietnam veteran. And he's made a video about Hex. He was there. And that was kind of a surprise. It was a very pleasant surprise, because I saw his video and he just struck me as someone that, you want to meet someone and just shake their hand and just say thanks and hello. And so he was there. And then there were a couple other people there that were guests. So we met in this dining room of this restaurant, and we filled the whole dining room. I'm surprised they let us do that, because this was during COVID. But so yeah, that was really the highlight of that particular trip, because I got to know Hexologist at the beginning, and I remember making a video and just publicly stating how much I appreciated his work, and the fact that he's got a young family, and they need attention too, and the fact that they were willing to give him the time to do videos every day. We were talking backstage about how involved video production is. So it's not just push a button, talk for 10 minutes and push a button. It's much more than that. So anyway, Hexo and I really got to know each other over the year and the launch phase. So I told him that once I'm able to retire, the first thing I want to do is drive up to Idaho and treat you to dinner. So that was the last thing I did on that particular trip, but that was the highlight of it, because that was the main objective. And so that was just so awesome. And so then I came home, and then a few months later, there was another meetup in Orlando. So I did that one also. And again, I rented a car to take a road trip, because I used to be a deadhead and I love road trips. So drove all the way to Orlando, Florida. Didn't realize that Texas is like a 900+ mile drive from.
Yeah, it's a big drive.
From one end to the other. I saw that sign. I'm like, no. But I did it. It was cool. And Orlando was awesome. Met up with David Morales, Nardo for the win. Nardo was the person that I wanted to see in Florida, a lot. Because I relate to him. He does a lot of work with his hands. I work with my hands. So and I met up with him like right away. Like soon as I got there, the next morning we met up and spent the whole day together. It was just really awesome. Got to meet his mom and stepdad. They're great people. Because he brought them along as guests. Hexologist was there again. Got to meet Big Pep. I didn't think he was going to be there. Big Pep was someone I've been wanting to meet for a while because we're the same age, approximately. Motley was there. Motley was another person I've wanted to meet for a while. Coffee showed up. I didn't think he was going to make it, and then he showed up out of the blue. So that was another surprise. We all just had a great time, had dinner together. Hex Kong was there also with his wife. I believe they're married, if not engaged.
Sure. Yeah.
And then Corey, an investor, he showed up a little later after dinner. He was there with his wife. We had a great time together because he's from the Northeast. I'm from the Philadelphia area. He's from New Jersey somewhere. I'm not going to say exactly where. Sure. But anyway, yeah, he's taller than me, which, I've met very few people in life who are taller than me because I'm 6 foot 4. How tall are you? I'm 6 foot 4.
Yeah, 6'4". Nice, dude. Nice.
Yeah, and he was at least an inch, if not 2 inches taller than me. So it was like, man, it's like, I got to shake your hand, man. I don't meet many people like that.
I guess you got to meet Children of the Grave, because I think RG3 said he was like 6'7" or something like that. Maybe he can vouch. But yeah, I agree with your point. I mean, I've only actually met one Hexican outside of like live streaming, which was RG3 one time when before he got this new job, he had some sort of like traveling job thing, and we had some dinner and whatnot, had some burgers and kind of just talked about Hex, and that was before the big payday, and we were like strategizing like, oh man, maybe I do want to end stake some of these stakes that are going to end in half a year, and just stake them out longer. And thankfully I did, man, because I got a lot more t-shirts because of it.
Sure. I did have dinner with RG3. I think that was before I took my trip, and either one of the two trips. He was driving through Arizona to do business, and yeah, we met up for dinner and had a great time. And on my way home from Orlando, I stopped and visited two classmates, people I went to school with, which that was actually a lot of fun. And then I also met up with another Hexican named Abracadabra on Twitter. And the coolest thing about meeting him, different from any other Hexican I met so far, is we met up at this restaurant, and he asked me how it was driving because it was snowing there at the time, and the roads were pretty bad. And I told him, it's not too bad. I said, it's not as bad as it is in Pennsylvania, because that's where I'm from. And he's like, oh, I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm like, really? Where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm just from a little town called Spring City. And I'm like, Spring City? I'm like, that's next door to where I'm from. So it's like, that's like 2 minutes down the street. So it was like so awesome to meet someone, in another state that's originally from a town that's like right next door to yours. It was just, totally awesome. And so we had a great dinner, and it was just awesome.
No, it's awesome, man. I mean, I think Vegas is going to be like the first like giant Hex meetup. And, I tell you what, we were also talking in the green room for a few minutes before we started that I think the first time that you went on live stream, if I don't recall, you said it was the online conference that Maddie did.
That was the first live stream that had an audience that I was aware of.
Okay, yeah.
The actual first live stream may have been just a test. It was with me. It was when RG was just getting Discourse Syndicate started. He basically hit up me, Hexo, and somebody else, and the four of us spoke together online, but I don't know if anybody else was even aware of it.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was awesome. I mean, the first Hex conference, it wasn't something that like none of us were told about until it happened, right? We're all kind of like, oh, this is cool, this first Hex conference. And I know Maddie messaged me for that. And then, yeah, it wasn't maybe like 3 months ago or something like that him and RG3 were like, hey, big announcement, we're going to do the Hex conference, but in person this time. So that was really exciting. And like, I know when that happened, when I was watching it live, I was like, all right, man, I got to be there. I'm going to Vegas. So that'll be cool, man. Never been there, but that'll be the first time.
I think the thing that really made me nervous about being at the HEX conference with Maddie wasn't the fact that there was an audience, but it was the fact that Maddie contacted me personally and asked me about being on there. And he told me what I would need to be on there. And that involved having to have a green screen. And I said, well, my internet where I lived was terrible. So I told him, I said, well, I could probably take my computer over to a friend's house and use his internet. But I said, I don't have a green screen. And he wrote back, he's like, okay, great. You'll be speaking at this time on this day. I'm just like, okay, I guess I better get a green screen. So my friend didn't have a green screen. He had a green blanket, but it wasn't green enough. And I'm just finding this out like 15 minutes before I'm supposed to go online. So my friend and I are scrambling on trying to get something together so I can have a backdrop. And, I'm backstage, and Gary Funding Jim, who's someone I would like to meet a lot. He's like, come on, Tim, we're rooting for you. You can do it. We're trying to hang up a blue tarp, and the tarp was too heavy and it fell off the wall because all we had were thumbtacks. It's finally we got the tarp hung up. But then the lighting was all terrible. I couldn't get the back screen to look right. It was all pixelated. Finally, I had to put my computer on a stool on the floor, and I had to sit on my legs to boost myself up just high enough that I could look at the camera straight on. So I'm in pain the whole time I'm talking, and a little bit nervous talking to an audience.
Yeah, right.
So the way I dealt with that is I just started talking and I didn't stop. It's like I didn't hardly give Maddie a second to talk, just so I can get everything I wanted to say out of the way. But it worked.
That's hilarious. I know we were talking about it a little bit, but as someone that's I've had this channel for, 12, 13 years, something like that, but have only made videos for the past maybe 11. And there's such a difference between just shooting a video and maybe editing it or just leaving it raw and then doing a live stream. As we were talking about, there's just so much more that goes into it that you don't necessarily appreciate until you've done it. So I had no idea, but yeah, you definitely did really good there. And it's always like that where sometimes in your head, your head can be louder than what reality is, So in reality, you're performing fine, you're doing good, but in your head, it's like, holy moly, got all these factors that people don't know about.
That's the difference between making videos and live streaming. It's like the magic of editing can make anybody look good. But, the live stream is where it's at because that's where you're being you without any filters and without any help. And it's when I was younger, it's this is why I was into jam bands like The Dead, because it's what you do on stage is what really matters. Anybody can sound good in a recording studio. It's on stage is where it's at, where you're in front of thousands of people and you can hold it down. It's that. That's what separates the men from the boys. And this is why I love, the HEX community and everybody streaming. It's anybody that's got the guts to stream deserves credit just for being willing to put themselves out there. Even if they don't put their face out there, if you put out good content, Wales Only is another person I would just absolutely love to meet. I hope he shows up in Vegas. I was chiding him. I said, you could just wear a bag like the Unknown Comic with a HEX logo on it. We'll all just know it's you. It's because I would love to meet him because even though he doesn't show his face on stream, he's still on stream and he still delivers blockbuster information. So it's I have respect for anybody that comes out in any way on behalf of the HEX community.
Me too, man. I've never been a part of something that was so powerful and so magnetic almost. Like I said, I've been in since early 2017 and was in other cryptos at the time, like Litecoin specifically. And I remember the community on Twitter being oh, okay, this is cool. It's interacting with people, but that was all behind an alias, And so, it's awesome to see even just recent videos or just people doing live streams that there are so many Hexicans out there that are legit. These are all the people that have stakes as well, and that do what they said they were going to do. And you got a lot of like military Hexicans, and it's just it's interesting to see like the dynamic of the community. You know, like you mentioned, you got Hexicans of all ages, and it's really cool that yeah, this is just the beginning. I mean, things like PulseChain, I'm actually really excited for that, because it's going to give an opportunity. Like for Hex, it was just Bitcoin that had the free claim, and if you had Ethereum, you could do the adoption amplifier. But this is going to be significantly different, where not only are you going to incentivize people that have Ethereum ERC20s to get a copy, but also the people that participate in the sacrifice as a like a political statement, I think will be very interesting to see. And like I said, no other fork of Ethereum has done this, so it's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, this is going to be really groundbreaking. You know, you mentioned that, you know, there's a lot of military-minded people in Hex, and other people have observed this. And I actually made a video about this a while back as to why I believe that is so. And it's like, you know, people join the military because of something that they believe in. You know, they believe in America, and they believe in standing up for something. And unfortunately, you know, in the military, you have a chain of command, and that chain of command has the ability to create narratives, and you end up defending the narrative. But it's like in Hex, you know, we're not following a narrative. We're following something that is a real product that doesn't have a chain of command. You know, we're not being bossed around. We're just a bunch of individuals who are running a code, and, you know, we're free to be ourselves. And it's like, that allows us to have something to believe in and stand up for. And I think that's why we draw military people, because it's like those people who have that are going to be attracted to something that allows them to exemplify that. And, you know, now with Pulse coming out, we can actually broaden our horizons to include other people. You know, other ERC20s could create their own ecosystem surrounding Pulse. You know, we can have a similar community with Pulse that could exist independently of the Hex community, but at the same time be working for the same objectives, having the same conviction about it all, you know, and just compound those efforts. And, you know, it's, wow, it's like every day is just gets better.
Well, it's true. I mean, and Ethereum has been talking about doing ETH 2.0 and proof of stake since like 2017 was supposed to be the implementation. And it's cool to see someone like Richard that has had success in other aspects of life before he even got into cryptocurrency. And so, yeah, I mean, to your point, not just about Hexicans and the community, but yeah, as far as like, if anyone could take the current Hex system state and make it better as far as the experience of unstaking and stuff like this, then it would be Richard. Because for someone like Vitalik, I've got a clip that I did before our stream here that Richard talked about Vitalik raising the S load by like 12 or like 20 times, whereas before it was just so much cheaper to do an end stake. So it's cool that we got someone not only behind our back, but he's not favoriting the Hexicans and Pulse. You know, he's going to give everyone the same like clean slate. And I think that's going to be a really big driving force. I mean, we've seen people like Gary V repost the Hexican mug and then, you know, took it down. But someone like Mike Novogratz the other day, and just a lot of people that are seeing like, oh, okay, like this is actually legit. When you look at that price chart, it's like Hex is all the way up here, and then all the way up here, and then all the other ones are down here, and it makes people wonder.
Sure. And on top of all of that, Richard's paying for all this. You know, he hasn't asked anybody to contribute to the pot, to pay for developers, you know, to pay for the cost of hosting websites, you know, to pay for audits or anything. It's like he paid for all of this. And it's, you know, I don't know how many people have somebody in their life that's been willing to fork out that kind of money to build something to benefit you that much. Nobody's done anything like that for me. I mean, I have family that's done things for me that have gone out of their way to help me, but I mean, not to the degree that Richard has. And he's helped, potentially people all over the world, and has opened a door for people all over the world to benefit from the fruits of his labor.
It's super true, man. There's always like people that want to criticize and that want to just look at something from the outside, and then there's people that actually hear that criticism and they don't know what they don't know who the person is they're talking about. Like with me and Richard Hart, and I was like, okay, let me do some research on this and let's see if he actually is a scammer and if he is a fraud, like all these Bitcoin maxis say. And thankfully I did do that, because it just goes to show you that someone like Richard, like you mentioned, he's done nothing but give to the crypto community, to the Bitcoiners. He's done nothing but educate people, and in return, slowly people are coming around to it. But it's just crazy, the slander and the attacking that went on. But I think finally, the people that were on the wrong side of history, they're either on the right side or they're not. And for us that are on the right side, it's like, okay, well, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, being successful.
People can criticize all they want if they build something better, but if they don't build something better, they really ought to just keep their mouth shut until they learn to build something better, or accept the fact that they just aren't capable of doing that and supporting that which is better. I mean, that to me, that's just common sense. That's just logic. But unfortunately, people, they live according to their reactions. They live according to their emotions. And it's like, those things aren't knowledge,
Yeah. Well, and like you mentioned too, about making things better, Richard with PulseChain, one of the PulseChain developers, at least on GitHub, found a bug in the Ethereum code. And so it's cool that even though there might be people ignoring Richard on the Ethereum side or not wanting to give credit where it's due, that's fine. Someone like Richard is still making their network better while also making a solution for, Hexicans and everyone else on Ethereum, the Ethereans, to not pay such high fees and stuff like that. So
I wonder if the PulseChain will have its own bug bounty program, or would we just find bugs on the Ethereum chain and then they would automatically correct themselves in Pulse? I don't know if anything's been said about that. It's just a curiosity.
Right. Yeah, I haven't really heard any answers to that one specifically either. But yeah, that is one of the cool things too. Is to your point, Ethereum and copies of Ethereum are a little bit different in the fact that it is like a layer one, and it is a virtual machine, as opposed to something like Hex, which is just a smart contract that's locked and built on top of it. So sometimes I hear some people that are favoriting one or the other, like it's either all Hex or it's all Pulse. It's or it's all ETH Hex or it's all Pulse Hex, and it's like, man, that's not necessarily the smartest way to be thinking about things, right? If you're already staked and you might already have liquid Hex, you're going to get that copy on both chains. And like Richard said in response to those kinds of comments with Bitcoin Cash, where some people, they sold all their Bitcoin, went into Bitcoin Cash, or vice versa. You wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of history by just choosing one or the other. If you get it for free, why not have both?
Well, I must confess that after I free claimed my Bitcoin, I swapped it for ETH and then gave all that ETH to the adoption amplifier. So it's like I went head first into Hex, because where I was with cryptocurrency, it's like, if Hex doesn't work, it's over. I'm out.
Yep, same.
I mean, the only other platform that I liked before Hex came out was Steemit. And that was because it had something practical that you can do with crypto other than just hold on to it and hope it goes up in value someday. It's like you can actually do something engaging with it that involved engaging with other people. And but honestly, I got rid of all my Steem and traded that for ETH and gave it to the adoption amplifier. So it's like I even went in on all that too. And the fact is, the Hex community has blown away the connection that I cultivated in the Steemit community. It's like, and it happened fairly quickly. I mean, it's exponential now, but it's like I've only met one person in Steam that I've actually met in person, compared to, going on to be dozens of Hexicans that I've met in person, and soon to be hundreds.
Yeah, it's true. I go on to the PulseChain, like t.me/PulseChain.com Telegram, and I tell you what, one of the most like exciting things about it is, like I mentioned, like the honey versus vinegar approach with some of the other communities, and kind of just like let's see, Nerd Girl Nicole, she's kind of like leading by example with like the building bridges things. But it's cool to see people from other communities like hearing about Pulse and finding out that it doesn't like favorite Hexicans and whatnot, and them being in there too, because it feels like Hex since day one, and it feels like getting into Hex all over again, but this time with a significantly higher chance of like onboarding a lot more people.
Hey Bran, if you can keep talking for a moment, I need to turn I need to turn my camera off for about a minute. I want to drink some water and do something else for a second. I'm still here.
No worries, dude. I'll just I'll remove you from the screen and I'll catch up with the chat real quick here. Just wave to me whenever you want to come back on. Yeah, let me cover the chat. So shout out to the chat. I know we haven't really got to talk a whole bunch, but that's because we're spending time with the person Tim. So David Morales says, didn't know what a legend you were when I saw you in your room. I want to be like Tim when I grow up. Exactly, man. Exactly. Let's see. Axis Alive says, hello, BallietBran and Tim, fellow Hexicans. How are you all doing? Doing great. Doing great. It was cool to see you on stream the other day. Maddie had like a huge panel of people, and that was awesome. X-Ray Link, nice to see you, my friend. You're modded now, so he's all good there. Identity Block, glad you could have made it. Let's see. Nate J, Despide Tu Jefe, Marcavelli. And then, Tim, just wave if you're okay. He's ready. Okay. All right. Let's put him back on.
All right. Thanks.
Totally,
just
man.
Need some refreshment there.
Oh yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, definitely. When you're streaming and whatnot, you can get kind of parched, So
yeah. So yes, I am very much looking forward to Las Vegas. I mean, when I was growing up, I hated Las Vegas. I thought it was just the most vain place in the world. Like, who would ever really want to go there, seriously? But then, I live only a few hours from it, and my one brother, who's a championship level pool player, went there for his birthday. So I went up to go see him for his birthday, and I was like, hey, this place ain't all that bad. And then I went up for my brother's wedding, and it's like, I kind of like this place. Maybe I'll get a residence here.
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I've never been. My three older brothers have, like on different occasions and whatnot, and yeah, it'll be really cool. Like I mentioned with RG3, it was cool to meet him in person, but this is just going to be like a different level. Like we've talked a little bit with yourself, some of the Hexicans that the meetups that you've done, and there's actually one today that like Crispy I think is hosting in like Connecticut, and
yes,
so that's awesome as well.
Yes.
So
yeah,
but Vegas is going to be a whole nother level.
Totally. Maddie's talking about us having access to the Jumbotrons on Fremont Street, which I'm familiar with. They're movie screens that are like 2 blocks long, and we're going to be able to like put Hex material up on those screens. That is just going to be off the hook. I mean, wow. I'm looking forward to wearing. I've got some special regalia that I've had custom made for this meetup. I have a Hex t-shirt that a local printer is making that has a matrix theme to it that I want to wear. And then I also got a necktie with Hex logos on it that matches one of my suits that I'm going to wear to the dinner that I'm looking forward to wearing. So yeah, Vegas is going to be just out of this world. If anybody has an opportunity to go there, to even just like drive through for a day and just stop in and just have lunch with somebody, just hit somebody up on Telegram and say, hey, I'm in town. Anybody available? You want to grab something to eat? It'll be worth it just for that. It's so awesome just to be able to be in the presence of some other person that's like involved with something that you're involved with. It's just really, it's awesome.
Right. It's so true, man. I definitely feel the same way, and kind of like we were talking about earlier, like it's cool to join other people's live streams, or just be passionate about something, but it's also fun as someone that's got some Hex merch to kind of wear it around too. And I've been complimented multiple times, or just had people look at the shirt a lot more than they would like a Nike shirt or something else. So it's cool to wear something that it's got a pretty logo, that's got the top price performance of 2020, that pays like a 40% average APY if you're stake the average length. It's just really cool, man. It's changing the game, and people are just starting to come aboard. I mean, there was like the Richard Hart and Jane King and Rick Shattuck interview that was really cool. And like now I'm like constantly on the PulseChain Telegram when I'm not doing other things, and Rick is there a lot. And so it's cool to be able to talk to some of these people, or some of these OG Bitcoiners as well, and like just hear their perspective and hear that they're really interested in Pulse, and that it's like the top thing going on right now.
Yeah. When I first got into Bitcoin, one of the first things I did is I made a couple of YouTube videos. I kind of wish I saved them. I no longer have them on my channel. Because the one that I did, I took the Metallica song called Sad But True, and I edited out the words, and I'm like speaking over top of the music to the beat of the music, telling people why Bitcoin's going to take over the world. And then I would leave the chorus in that says Sad But True, I'd stop and let James Hetfield sing. And then I'd zoom out the lyrics again and start talking some more. And I almost feel like doing something like that with Hex, but I don't know. I like live streaming better. It's fun. And
well, you mentioned meeting people like Corey, an investor, like or Joe Hexotic, that's got a lot of music talent. And to your point, like maybe you're comfortable just doing one thing, or some people are just comfortable not being on stream. But it doesn't mean that, like, if you're still passionate about Hex, or like doing something, there's always something to do that doesn't necessarily involve putting your face or name out there. But like for the music that we talk about, like Corey, I guess he's going to be releasing some music soon too. He mentioned like within the next like week or so, like of another song. So like that guy's got some serious talent, and like to find out that was the like first and second songs that he's ever made, it's like, holy shit, dude, we really got some talented Hexicans here. It's awesome.
Yeah, I've heard at least one of his songs. I didn't know that he was new to songwriting or production. I don't remember discussing that with him in Orlando. So
it was on Joe Hexotic's channel, actually. It was his one-on-one with Corey, that Corey was like, because Joe, like I said, is a music guy, and he was kind of asking him like, where'd you get your inspiration and stuff like this? And he had mentioned that, he's always liked music and stuff like that, but he had never made his own raps and his own song. So for someone like him, for someone like Freddie Quotes, and just some of the other Hexicans, it's awesome to see, like I mentioned, like the talent, or people that do some of the like the video editing and things like that. It's awesome. I mean, someone like Joe, I was able to use his clip of Naga in my intro, so I wouldn't be able to do that kind of stuff by myself unless I was commissioning it.
Naga is a character. I think he's going to be in Vegas. I hope so. Yeah. He's pretty off the hook. I love it.
Yeah, the other day he's like, check out my Lamborghini, and it's like it's this little bicycle in Mexico where he's at, and the guy just got one hell of a humor. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Oh man.
It's super cool.
So, you asked me when I first got in crypto, and Bitcoin wasn't even invented until 2000, and it was released in 2009. But the fact is, in my own experience, it's like I started studying about the nature of banking and money and the economy years before Bitcoin was invented. The things that Wales Only talks about, like with the history of banking and all the things on his live streams.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much was studying that stuff for years before Bitcoin came out. I'm very familiar with all the things that he mentions in that regard. And, Hex to me it's a vindication of all of that stuff that I studied, because if you study all that, I mean, it's not good news. It's basically the history. It's the history of a group of people who basically manipulated and just, took control. It's just, it's not a very edifying subject to study, because the way America was founded, the people were supposed to own the money, in the sense that the people would determine economic policy. How much money is in circulation? What's a person's labor worth? What is our productivity worth? That was something that Americans were to determine and then have their elected representatives execute within the Treasury. Well, when the Federal Reserve came in, it's like they took over that job, and the American people don't have a say-so in economic policy, because elected representatives do not tell the board of reserve or the board of directors of the Federal Reserve how to do their job. They say, no, we tell you how we're going to do our job. And, that's just a really evil process of how that all came about. It's not a fun thing to study, but it is interesting. But the point being, it's like Hex is giving the power back to people. By minting our own money, we are literally determining the value of our own labor. We really don't have to live at the mercy of exchanges and other banks and other currencies to tell us what Hex is worth. We have the power to determine what Hex is worth in the big picture. I mean, until we have a community big enough where we're producing things that really impact the marketplace to that extent, it's just talk. But the fact is, we do have that potential at our disposal. And this is one of the things that makes me so excited about Hex. This is why I want to, be involved in the lives of other people, and not sit around and play games like Richard would suggest people not do. So it's like,
yeah, I know that was like my biggest, that was like the biggest turn on for me when hearing about cryptocurrency and like the cypherpunk, movement stuff. And speaking of which, to your last point, did you see the, you mentioned Fed Reserve and stuff like this. Did you see the video that RG3 did with G. Edward Griffin?
Yes, I didn't see it in its entirety. I got home a little late and picked up after it started, and I didn't go back and watch it in its entirety. I've read some of G. Ed Griffin's material, so I'm very familiar with his position on things. I've known about him for years. But yeah, I did watch a portion of the live stream.
Well, just the point is like you mentioned, like I have some of my friends or some of my family, asking me like, oh, why Hex over these other cryptocurrencies? And like a lot of it does come from just knowing in general how things work, and that, okay, they're literally printing dollars like the Fed printed Gopher, or like out of helicopter money. And if you want something that's not going to be devalued, you need to be putting your money in assets, and things like Hex are income generating assets, and things like Hex don't have a Fed Reserve that can just dilute it, so that's the reason why I was kind of like asking that, is because it seems that a lot of the Hexicans do know their history, and they do know how the monetary system and just money works, like you mentioned with whales only. And yeah, it's awesome to see that, like, that the opportunity is here, and this is kind of like what we're doing slowly but surely as a grassroots movement, is creating the better cryptocurrency and store of value.
Sure. In the comments, a guy named Archie S mentioned the Money Masters documentary is a good introduction. I've seen the Money Masters like a dozen times. I mean, I practically have that memorized.
Oh, nice.
That is probably the documentary that I would recommend to anybody that is interested in the history of money. That pretty much covers everything. And yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And Hex, why Hex over any other crypto? Richard has, addressed this very eloquently when he says that if you're going to replace banks, which is what Bitcoin was trying to do, you have to replace the bank's products. And, banks have a way of luring people in by offering people free money in the form of interest. And it's like, X pays interest, Bitcoin does not. And, Bitcoin does not have interest as part of their program. So you can't collect interest from Bitcoin for your Bitcoin. You got to give it to somebody and hope, you get something back. And I did that and they didn't give back and I learned my lesson. So it's like, that thing alone is the thing that sets Hex apart from everything else. And in addition to that, you hold your own keys, you run the code. So it's like, Hex is just a tool that you have. It's not a program that you participate in. It's a tool that you have, and you don't even have to buy the tool. Hex is free to use. If you want to acquire Hex, then you got to do whatever is required to acquire Hex, which in most cases is buying it off an exchange, or if you happen to know a really jealous Hexican that will give you some or sell you some. It's like that's all it is it's a tool at your disposal.
It is true. And yeah, I've had a lot of people reach out to me recently like, oh, hey, Bran, should I get into Dogecoin? Should I get into this stuff? And oh, why should I get into Hex and not Bitcoin and stuff like this? And yeah, for most of the people out there, like Richard's kind of always talked about that. I mean, sure, there's the different consensus as far as like proof of work versus proof of stake. But yeah, like you mentioned, Bitcoin doesn't pay you an interest. And if you are lending out and loaning out your Bitcoin or anything for that matter to hope to earn an interest, well, you're actually kind of doing the opposite of what crypto was invented for. And you're giving your money to a middleman, which is just like the bank or any counterparty. And like you mentioned, a lot of people don't see that money back, or we got hacked or we got exploited, stuff like this. So
I want to give a shout out to Benny Bills. He's just asked, what's up, Bran and Tim? Good vibes. I like Benny's tweets a lot. He puts out a lot of nice tweets. I love Twitter. I signed up on Twitter when it first came out, and I never really used it because I was the only person that I knew who used it. And it's like,
yeah, same.
Getting people to follow you who don't really know you is kind of hard. So it kind of made it not fun. So I lost interest in it. But after Hex came out, it's like I started using it more and finding more Hexicans to follow. And it's like, to me, Twitter is like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's like It's like I wake up in the morning, I check Staker.app, and I check Twitter. Everything else is relative.
It's true. That's where like the cryptocurrency like ecosystem is, right? Just like with Bitcoin, there was like the cypherpunk forums, or like there's these like Bitcoin talk forums and stuff like that. Well, that was one of the things I had read is I'd found out Litecoin from it being like analogous as like silver to Bitcoin's gold, and then because I found out about that on Reddit, and they're like, oh, if you're just on Reddit, try going to crypto Twitter. And I was like, all right, well, same thing with you. Like I've had my BallietBran Twitter account since like 2009, but created it in junior high and like no one ever really used it. But now it like is like the central hub of like where everyone's at, where you can see the other participants in other cryptocurrencies, what they're doing. And it's just like the place to be for like instant information. Like if you're just following like the old way of news and consuming information, whether it's on like TV or like articles, then you're not getting it right as it happens.
Sure. Archie S made a comment. He said the Wizard of Oz doc, he did too. I can't remember the name. The actual name is called Secrets of Oz. It's produced by the same guy that made the Money Masters. His name is Bill Still. So just to answer that, you just mentioned it. You were in junior high school in 2009. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
I was in junior high school during Ronald Reagan's presidency.
Yeah, man. Well, to your point, different ages and whatnot. But even with someone yesterday that I was at lunch with, my girlfriend and some of our friends, this guy is like 40 something, and I was trying to tell him about Hex, and he's like, like I mentioned, he's like, well, Hex over Dogecoin, or why Hex over Ethereum or Bitcoin. And I tried to explain to him like the bond concept, because like you mentioned, for someone like myself to kind of know about that. And, thankfully, me and my 3 older brothers and my dad, we got like savings bonds for like Christmas and for our birthdays. But when I tried to explain that to him, the concept just wasn't coming through. And,
Sure.
and then I tried to tell him like, well, just take the price appreciation of Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency and then multiply that by the interest, and you're getting, the difference between those two numbers multiplied. And anyway, so for him, I've kind of like had to like slowly work him into it. And I've already given him some Hex in a wallet, which he's like seen, 10X. So it's like, if you can't convince them right away, or maybe they're not getting it, then maybe they can just see it and buy in later.
One thing I've learned in life is, people, they act like they want something, but when the opportunity comes, they really don't want it after all. And, if someone asks me, well, why Hex over like Dogecoin? I just say, because I like making more money in my sleep than I do working. And Dogecoin cannot guarantee that for you. You're at the mercy of the market. Hex can do that for you if you have enough shares. It's just, what do you want? And it's like, I have a tendency to make people tell me what they want before I start explaining things in too much detail. I mean, I like explaining things, but I don't like people, I call them curiosity trolls. They ask a lot of questions, but they're not actually interested in what they're asking the questions about. It's just like they just want interaction. And it's like, okay, well, if you want interaction, tell me that up front. Don't pretend that you're interested in Hex when you're not really interested. That's a good point. It's a game.
Right.
To the people.
Well, that's a very good point. If you can read people and you can understand where someone wants to go, then you can cater that message specifically towards them, as opposed to like a general message, like a blanket elevator pitch that might not be as catered to them. So that's a very good point. And that's actually one of the things that I like. Richard mentioned that with PulseChain, he won't be doing the same thing as he did with Hex, where he talks about the design intention and price appreciation. But at the end of the day, that's really all anyone freaking cares about is the price appreciation. And it's true that Richard Hart mentions that, like, people miss the opportunity of Bitcoin early on, but after it's 6.5 million X later, now they want to come in,
And I see a great irony in that, because when I got into Bitcoin, the thing that excited me was the prospect of being part of the network. I wanted to be a miner. I wanted to be able to mint coins to create some kind of economic model that Bitcoin would serve as a currency of, because I was mining it. But the fact of the matter is, I didn't have the computing power necessary to mine it, even though I got in 2011. So that's how I learned about Litecoin. Someone said, well, maybe you can try your hardware to mine Litecoin. And that didn't really work either. So it's like, that's why people are so focused on the price, because that's all that's left, is getting something and hoping it goes up in value. It's like Hex has an opportunity to return crypto back to its original roots of creating a new economy, because you mint your own coins. You don't need mining hardware. You can mint your Hex and you can do whatever you want with it. Yeah, if you want mad gains, you can hold on to it and sell it to an exchange for dollars or whatever. But it's like, you can use that. You can use the contract to build, a business. You can have like some kind of economic model and allow Hex to be the currency of that economic model, if that's what you want to do. And it's like, this is why I love Hex so much. It's like it's given me the opportunity to return to crypto with the original vision that I had for getting involved with crypto in the first place. Now, granted, I don't actually have an actual plan that I'm pursuing at the moment, because I'm almost 10 years older, and I kind of like the idea of having, more money than I've ever had in my life, and not having to work, and, enjoying life a little bit. I kind of like it. But for people who are younger that do have a vision and they do have the energy and the drive to want to do something like that, they now have that at their disposal.
Well, exactly. And it's interesting to see like some of the dynamics and dichotomies in the crypto space where like, oh, it's almost like social signaling and like virtue signaling where you've got people that are like, oh, I care about the environment so much, but yeah, let's have more hash rate and let's have this proof of work for Bitcoin. And it's like, okay, and now you're just switching over to Dogecoin as Elon's kind of talked about. And like, it's like in reality, no, things like Hex it's so cool the way that Richard has thought about all of this, where proof of work is actually just proof of stake, but in electricity and stuff like this. And it really is a security theater and whatnot. It could be 51% attacked and stuff like this. So it's interesting to see things like Pulse already doing what ETH wanted to do in 2017, but now it's finally, the sacrifice phase, probably going to be next week sometime, or it's going to be, very soon, according to Richard, which we should just, be prepared for anyways. But it's awesome to see that things that Richard is doing is going to be sustainable, and it's not going to be like unsustainable as Bitcoin's become like 10, or 12 years later, where now it's like, oh, this actually is becoming encumbersome for the people that do care about that.
Right. Yeah, it's all very well. We are in an interesting place in history. It's like doors have been open for us that have not been open for other people before. And we have an opportunity to do something really awesome and spectacular with that opportunity. And I am very much in it. And it's like, I've heard older people when I was younger say things like, oh man, I should have been born like 50 years ago, or I should have been born 20 years ago. Like they weren't meant for right now. And I've never felt that way. And now where I am now, I will never feel that way. It's like, it's easy for younger people to say, oh man, I wish I lived during the 80s when you did, when, all this electronic stuff was coming out. And yeah, the 80s was a great time to grow up. But the fact is we had challenges back then, and we didn't have tools back then that we do now. And it's like, it's like now is a great time to be alive. There's nothing to complain about, really isn't.
Totally, man. It's perspective. So I guess changing topics a little bit. I don't know if you want to, talk much about this, but in regards to Pulse, I know we kind of talked about like, we don't necessarily know when it's going to come out and per se, but all you can do is be prepared if you're going to participate.
Yes.
Do you have any, are you going to be participating in the sacrifice or anything like that?
Yeah. For now, the only strategy that I have is to simply dollar cost average in to the sacrifice pool each day. I mean, if it's only going for like 30 days, I'll probably put in something each week for 4 weeks. I don't know the amount of what exactly I'm going to give to the sacrifice, because all I have right now is Hex, and most of it is staked. I do have a pretty significant liquid supply in my wallet, but I'm kind of torn over whether or not I want to put that. I don't know if I want to sacrifice it, basically. I'm just torn. I'll know more as the sacrifice phase actually arrives, because it's like, quite frankly, I want to buy something, and I don't know if I'm going to buy it or if I'm going to sacrifice that Hex. I just don't know. But one way or another, I'm going to put something into the sacrifice chamber. If anything, I'll just buy something off of Coinbase and sacrifice it, send it to MetaMask and then sacrifice it. I don't know. I basically don't have the money to like pay the transaction fees to convert some ERC20 into Hex and then sacrifice it, because you got to pay the transaction fee to convert it, and then you got to pay the transaction fee to send it. And I don't have enough money to justify the fees, in liquid right now, other than my Hex bag. And like I said, I don't know if I want to sacrifice my liquid Hex. Like I said, and the reason I say that is because my Hex bag is enough to take care of me. I'm set. I really don't need, even if I missed out on Pulse, if I missed out on another 1000x, it doesn't matter. It's really relative money wise. I'd rather see new people get that 1000x than me anyway. I mean, I just don't need the money.
Right.
I'm going to probably sacrifice something, but I just don't know exactly what yet.
Well, and the beautiful thing about it is like I was saying, is say if you're not sure of doing something, well, like you mentioned with the liquid hex, you kind of know for the most part how that's going to be value wise and what you can do with it. And if you do nothing else but just hold it, it's going to get duplicated over as liquid hex on Pulse. And
exactly.
So that's a very good point. Like, even if you are participating a little bit, if you participated a little bit with Ethereum and say you got 5 or 10 ETH way back when, well, that's pretty much all you needed for the transaction fees, obviously until way later. But yeah, Pulse is going to be very similar, where I don't think it's going to take, a whole bunch of Pulse to do the transactions. And it's designed to do, quite the opposite of make the fees cheaper again. So yeah, that's definitely true, and definitely nice to hear from a different perspective of, kind of just pumping the brakes and just seeing how everything goes. But with what you might participate in, dollar cost averaging does seem to be the most true method for sure.
Sure. And yeah, I mean, regardless of what I do, I see that Pulse is just going to be amazingly successful. I think it's just going to blast off, and that's, I'm just biding my time and, patiently. It can't be any worse than it was waiting for Hex to launch, with 4 more weeks, 4 more weeks, 4 more weeks. I don't think Richard's going to put us through that ringer again, because he's got too big of an audience now. I think he'd rather just say, look, no expectations, no promises that it's going to be ready in any given time. It'll be ready when it's ready. And but at the same time, I think it would be just good business sense. And Richard has even tweeted about this already, that, once the sacrifice phase begins, when it ends, you don't want a really big lag in time between the end of the sacrifice phase and the actual launch of the main net. You want the main net to be at a certain launchable, development, so that once the sacrifice is over, you can just say, okay, we're going to launch the main net in 30 days because it's practically ready to launch now.
Right.
So
yeah, I know with today's live stream, he had mentioned that he thinks it's going to be ready in days, but then yeah, he had said something about that the developers that are working on it right now, they're like, hey boss, we're running out of problems to solve and running out of code and whatnot to solve. And I know he did mention that it is, yeah. And I know he mentioned that the final things that he was going to do was just wrapping up some of the last minute tweaks with, Dev Kyle and some of the other, devs that he wants to on like a private call separately and hammer out the last little bit of details there. But, I tell you what, it's really, even though it's not designed to, even though it is designed to help Ethereum with its fees and stuff like that, I think people like Vitalik are like, oh, okay, we kind of sat on our thumbs for 4 years. And sure, he's done a lot of great, he has, but I think someone like Richard, with already having a proof of stake fork of ETH and all these other things, I think it's really going to boost the cryptocurrency space, the technology as a whole.
Sure.
So it's going to be great.
I relate to Vitalik as Steve Wozniak, one of the guys who started Apple. Yeah. And Richard is like Steve Jobs. Richard is the marketing genius, and he knows what things need to do and what characteristics they have to go viral. Vitalik has, he's got the technological genius to build something like Ethereum, but Richard has the persona to tell the rest of the world why they need it. So, if Vitalik would have talked to Richard a little bit and maybe work with him, we wouldn't have needed to do Pulse in the first place. But because of how Richard is, he's not going to sit around and wait 50 years for Ethereum to get its act together. Now, I don't know a lot about the infrastructure of Ethereum, but I kind of have a feeling it's kind of like Ford trying to shift over to building electric cars. Ethereum going from proof of work to proof of stake is probably a lot more involved than just mirroring the system state, which is what Richard's doing. And that's probably why Richard is going to be able to, get the results that he wants to get in much shorter time because of the approach of doing it. I mean, has Vitalik thought of just doing a mirror of Ethereum and doing a mirror of the system state like Richard's doing to be a way of bringing about a proof of stake version of Ethereum? Probably not, because you're connected to your baby. You want to improve it and make it the way you want. But if you build it to work a certain way, starting over with the same thing isn't as easy, if you follow my train of thought.
I do. I mean, and as I was kind of alluding to earlier, just about like some of the other Ethereum forks, Binance Smart Chain is a Ethereum fork, Cardano is a fork of Ethereum, stuff like this. But as far as being most like similar to Ethereum and devs that wanted to develop on Ethereum or try stuff out on Ethereum, but now it's just too costly. I think that'll definitely give them the opportunity on the new chain. And yeah, it'll just be cool to see that it is like Richard's kind of mentioned it, a photocopy of the system state itself. And yeah, it's gonna be great, man. I think a lot of us are excited for it. And the other thing is with the sacrifice phase, I think it's really cool that Richard's kind of implementing a incentive to donate to charities and whatnot, like with Sens and Aubrey de Grey. I know that's one thing that him and Vitalik can at least share in common with donating. And so the point that I'm trying to say is Richard has mentioned, even in his book in SciVive since 2017, when I first started reading it, that the point was to fix the meat and stuff like this. But the way that you do that is by getting people what they want, which is mad wealth and stuff like that. So once you have those needs taken care of, you can maybe work on some other stuff too.
Yeah. Right before we started streaming, I made a little video for Markable Thoughts. Him and Johnny Chaos put out a thing asking people to make a 60-second testimonial. And I made one right before we started streaming. And
nice.
I mentioned something in there about the fact that Hex has allowed me to do what I love, which is, because I don't have to sell my time to live, I could do what I love doing. And because of the passive income that Hex provides. And I said in there that I believe that if other people had that option, the world would be a much different place, probably for the better, because, if people can do what they love, that they put their heart into it, and that they do the best that they can. And not everybody's just going to sit around and just indulge themselves to death. Some people actually like to do productive things when they are able to do what they want to produce.
Totally. So. Yeah. I'm actually retweeting it right now. I didn't catch that before until you just mentioned it. So I'm retweeting that now, but yeah, to your point, I know some people with the amount of t-shirts that they have that they're making, they're making 6 times what they make per year at their normal job. And so how many years with that amount of t-shirts and with that kind of interest does it take for someone to not necessarily retire, as in, like you mentioned, just do nothing, but to not have to work for the man or for the boss and stuff like that, and be able to do stuff that you still want to do that is still productive and that can also sustain, your future and finances and things like that.
Sure. And it's all just math. I mean, a person they need to know what it is that they want and what do I need in the way of T-shares? What kind of price appreciation needs to occur? Now, granted, that's a variable. You don't know that, but that's just something that you can take into consideration. I just did the easy route and just staked it till I made it, and that takes a lot of the math out of it. Just stake it till you make it.
Yeah, I know Crispy with Matty Allen, he was saying that he's recently retired, or at least he's retired now, but before he had set up a plan and a goal for that vision, he didn't have maybe the vision, and he thought he might be like retiring as like a Walmart greeter and stuff like this, and not having a whole bunch of assets and things like that. So it's cool when you're ready to make some changes and you write it down and you work towards it, that you can achieve those things. And with something like HEX, like nothing has ever been more easy to achieve those goals than with the top performing asset of 2020. And this was before all of the actual dams break loose of gatekeeping, right? Things like Pulse, Richard kind of alluded to in the stream, that there's probably going to be less gatekeeping and people are finally coming around, so it is going to hit that hockey stick moment where, it is going exponential and parabolic. And I think we're not too far away from that personally.
Yeah. I believe so. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the gatekeeping is personality issues. People are just proud. They're too proud to admit that someone like Richard, outsmarted them. And I think that's the source of the gatekeeping. People could say, well, the OA has too much HEX and we don't trust them. And that's baloney. It's like, that's not the real reason. I don't buy it. I think it's more of a personality dispute. It's like,
right. Okay.
I don't want to sound cynical about that in regard to HEX, sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if if Pulse is looked down upon for the same reason, because Richard invented it. It's a superior product. We hate the fact that our product isn't as good, so we're going to blame Richard for being inventive and gatekeep it. And it's like, that is so immature. It's like, we can do so many wonderful things for so many people. If that factor wasn't an issue, that's one of the, I have a friend that I consider him my best Hexican friend. He lives here in this area. He's a plumber I work for periodically, and he's lamented with me about that from time to time, about there's so much infighting between the XRP army versus this coin, and it's like that brings him down. It's like crypto should work together to impact the world. And it kind of bothers me when people like to point the finger at Hexicans for we should do more to connect with other communities. And I haven't spoken out about this yet, but it's like, sure, I'm not going to apologize for having a backbone. If somebody's if somebody's going to verbally assault one of my friends, I'm not just going to sit there and say, oh, we better be nice so we can connect with these people. It's like, no, you're going to get put in your place. It's like, you better shut up while you have a chance.
No, that's true, man. Yeah, and that always goes to show, it's nice when you're not the only one, speaking the truth to the power and stuff like that. But yeah, I think either way that, as far as Pulse and stuff like that goes, that they're all going to hit whether it's a couple years down the road or however long. You really can't argue with the numbers and with, say, like the network effect. And, like I mentioned earlier with the chart that Richard posts a lot of, just like HEX and then all these other cryptocurrencies. And it's something that people are, coming around to. And if nothing else, at least for right now, for the people that are here listening, watching, and participating, this is the opportunity, because, HEX at pennies was just a dream, not too long ago. And then when the same thing happens with dollars, you're going to be like, shit, dude, I wish I would have, stacked up more maybe. So the point is the people that are in it now are going to be rewarded very handsomely. But the cool thing is that there's always meat left on the bone per se. And it's not just like benefiting one particular group of individuals.
You'll have these people saying stuff like, man, I wish I would have gotten a T-share for 3 easy payments of $499.95 rather than waiting until $50,000 for a T-share.
It's true, man. Yeah, there's so many people like even in the beginning of HEX, I didn't didn't really grasp the concept of T-shares until I saw it in action, right? And then big payday was definitely like a spike in the T-share rate. But yeah, I'm glad, even though I didn't necessarily understand everything, I'm glad that I implemented the stuff that Richard had talked about that might be the most like game theory positive as far as staking long and strong. Because, like I mentioned, you look at some of the stakes from back then, and it's like, man, T-shares were so cheap at that rate, but we're going to be saying the same thing, a couple of years from now. So it's for the people that are getting in now, like, yeah, don't necessarily look at the people that got in super early and like you mentioned, lament or like wish that you could have got in then. Just like focus on now and realize where it's gone since then. It's only going up and to the right. So
yeah. Another challenge that I've had in conveying the value of HEX to other people, and this seems more prevalent with older people than younger people, but it seems that older people cannot associate value with digital products very well. They say, well, how could something that's not tangible have value? And it's like, the fact is, digital products are tangible. They're not material, but they are tangible because they can be exchanged for other things that you can exchange for cash, or you can directly exchange certain cryptos for cash. And I don't know why I'm bringing this up other than for just something to talk about, but it's just something that occurred to me that this is a generational transition that people need to understand about the reality of the digital world. Economic value can exist in a digital realm. And, people that are accustomed to handling material objects their entire life, coins, paper, even credit cards, it's something you can touch. The fact that you can touch your phone, you're not actually giving somebody your phone. You're actually sending something from your phone that is money to somebody else. But yet, if you tell it, they don't have a problem doing that with like PayPal. But yet with crypto, it's another level of value that needs to be communicated. And the fact is, the older people, people over the age of 50, they're the people that we want to onboard because they have the most disposable income. By that time, most of their debts are paid off. The kids have moved on with their life. Those are the people that are looking to retire, looking for something that they could put economic energy into because they actually have it to put in the first place. But that's the big challenge. In a way, I kind of feel, like I said, I'm not bragging, but in a way, I kind of feel advantaged in that part because I understand the digital world. It's like the digital world started to become a consumer product when I was a teenager. Home computers started to become mainstream, and I was one of those nerdy kids that grabbed onto that stuff right away. It's like, I love computers when I was a kid. You didn't get paid $50,000 a year to work with a computer when you were a kid. You got beat up by the other kids for being a nerd.
Right. Well, no, I mean, you're definitely right. Like that, there is a massive advantage and opportunity to updating your worldview. Like when you mentioned about the digital world that we've been in for a long time. But yeah, even when you mention, things like savings bonds and stuff like this, where in reality, like a lot of that stuff is already digital, like is, accounted for, or like everything that you're doing, like you mentioned, on your phone or with your bank, most of it's digital. And but yeah, it's definitely in the early days. I mean, I obviously wasn't around for it because I was born in '96, but the way that I can always like think of it, and the way that I thought about it since 2017 was like, man, this just seems like late '90s where people are like, what is internet and stuff like this, but they're finally coming around now. Where like in 2017, when you had the blow off top of 20,000 and then went to 6,000, then it floor dropped to 3, you had everyone saying, oh, well, look, I was right on this. And then now you finally have people coming around this cycle that were naysayers on the last cycle. And the more that something like even with Bitcoin, it's been around 10, 11, 12 years. The longer something's around, the more it is harder to refute its existence or that it's going to be shut down immediately, in my opinion. So it's just kind of like, the people that are in it now, like you mentioned, that saw the opportunity, that had their ears to the ground. Those people are early adopters, and they do get to benefit from that appreciation and from the design of it.
Yeah. Every invention that comes out usually takes about 20 years before it is adopted like mainstream. TVs, telephones, cars, everything. It's like all computers, home computers. It's like it takes at least 20 years for the average person to see a use in this. The first adopters are the people who see how this can impact the world. And it's usually because those are the people who want to impact the world. They're not just some mindless consumer that uses what's available because it's available. It's like that the first movers are the people who actually have an incentive to actually want to make a difference in the first place. And they're the ones who grab onto this stuff right off the bat. And that's just one more reason why I appreciate the whole HEX community, because we're the ones who see this. Even though crypto's been around over 10, Bitcoin launched in 2009, it's 2021, it's over 10 years. So we're over halfway to mass adoption. And, hopefully it doesn't take 20 years for the rest of the world to see HEX, because people are acquainted with the name Bitcoin. But, Bitcoin is not crypto. That's just one brand among an entire, system of products out there. So it's just a matter of us being able to, get people to see that distinction and have, help them have a reason to see that distinction and want to do something about it.
Right. Yeah. Like when, like you mentioned, as far as reasons why, that would gain adoption, HEX would gain adoption over the other things. And yeah, when you look at the design intention of HEX, it is cool because when Richard Hart mentioned that he was developing HEX and that CDs are like the second most popular product at your bank, I had no idea of that, but it does make sense because people don't want to be, when it comes down to the education of the dollar and fiat and stuff, people don't want to be diluted and devalued when, they're working multiple decades just to retire. So it is interesting when he framed it that way, that, oh, this is similar to, it's going to like surpass Bitcoin in price gains as far as the way that it's designed, but it also pays you an interest like a CD would, which is the second most popular product. When he said stuff like that, it's like, oh, okay, I can actually explain it to my grandpa a little bit more. And like my grandpa at first, he's like, man, I don't necessarily understand what's going on, but I know that, you're making videos about it. And I know that the news is talking about it. So it's cool to see, man. I mean, slowly but surely, no major change happens overnight, but when we're in it on a day-to-day basis, it's cool to see everything that goes on.
Yeah. I remember Richard made a tweet and it said that, HEX unites the generations, and it had a picture from a live stream that had like, it was probably Discourse Syndicate, but it had Crypto Grandma. It had someone her age, it had someone RG's age, it had someone your age. I don't remember all the people involved.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's like when people, generation gaps and the friction that exists between generations, that's an effect of the state of society. It doesn't have to be that way. And, I agree with Richard that HEX has that potential to bring people back together again, that we do not have to bang heads and point the finger at one another. The world is the way it is because of what you guys did. And, you guys are lazy and you don't care. And it's like that's all a side trip. We have something to fix it all. So, I like, knowing that I'm part of the solution, because that's what my heart is to be part of the solution. That's pretty much been my entire life. So, I don't think it's an accident that I've learned about Bitcoin way back when, or that I learned about Richard at the time that I did. It's like my whole life has been, orchestrated to to be available for this time. And even, even the suck that I've experienced along the way, like losing thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin, it's like I needed to learn from those experiences so that I don't lose millions of dollars worth of HEX in the future because, I didn't know that you shouldn't give your keys to somebody. I had to give my keys to somebody to learn that you shouldn't give your keys to somebody. So it's best to learn it back then than to learn it now.
Exactly. And Chuck brought up a really good point about, like you mentioned, there's a lot of nuance and stuff like that where in reality, like he mentions about the asset of time, right? Everyone's got the same amount of time and whatnot. You can never get it back. And so, that's the last thing I'll say is it's cool what Richard's doing, where HEX is going, and also the fact that, hey, I don't have to, like in 2017, it was like, I heard about crypto, heard about the gains, and it was all about trading. Now it's about like leverage trading and other stuff and yield farming and all this. But the fact that I can just have my T-shares in HEX, know that the contract is locked, it's immutable, no counterparties, not even Richard can change it if he wants to. And the fact that I'm just earning an interest on a daily basis, like that's always something that I was looking for. When I was younger, maybe like 16, 17, was curious about entrepreneurship and like passive income, but was always too scared to like start a business. So it's like, man, it's cool that, that this opportunity is here. And like you mentioned, you've gotten your boss and stuff like this. Like it's something that is it's a really cool gift to give people, and also the education, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, we're not leading people to the slaughter. We're leading them to the golden staircase upwards.
Yeah.
In a good way.
I want to address two comments that I just saw here. Chuck, Chuck's comment about time being a valuable asset, along with the next comment. I feel a deep sense of purpose to be here at this time, almost like it was fate. It's like all three of those go together. I agree very much with all three of those. And, time is our most valuable asset, and I thoroughly believe that the way we benefit the most from that asset is to, have something in your life that has you living on purpose. Because if not, it's like you just expire, you wither away. It's like there's no motive to stay alive, to like have energy and to, stay young. And,
right.
It's like when I was younger, there was a popular song called Glory Days. They pass you by. And I hated that song. The first second I heard that song, it's like I looked at my mom. I think she was in the room. I'm like, Mom, if I ever get to a place in life where I'm talking about the past being like the best time of my life, just kill me. Because it's like I have no point to be alive anymore. It's like I was determined, always have your glory days in front of you. It's like you always have to have something to give you a reason to move on. And then you will move on. And, HEX is just plays right into that. It's like, it's just one more reason to just love HEX and be involved.
Super true. Yeah. Everyone's got their own thing, like you mentioned, that drives them, that pushes them forward, that gets them out of bed. So yeah, it's cool that the whatever everyone's specific answer to that is individual. That's great, but yeah, it's nice to have something that can actually produce that result. Because like Crispy had mentioned about like fearing being a Walmart greeter and not being able to retire. There's a lot of people that yeah, maybe didn't save for their future and stuff like this, but doesn't take many X's in something like HEX or something like a interest-bearing asset like HEX that can get you to where you want to go.
Sure. Well,
cool, man. We can wrap it up here. It's been about 2 hours. Yeah, dude. Thank you for coming on.
Sure. It seems like a good stopping point. If you want to stop, I'm perfectly fine to stop right here. We have plenty of time. We can talk again. It's great to see you in Vegas. I'd like to see somebody do live streams from Vegas.
Yeah.
I think
I know. I know there's a handful of Hexicans. I know I've heard Maddie talk about it. I know I've heard RG3 and Kinetics talk about doing something. There's definitely going to be Hexicans doing some streams,
Sure.
And yeah, I plan to do maybe like a couple mobile here and there, but yeah,
Okay.
it'll be cool to be able to broadcast some of the experiences to everyone else that couldn't make it, but want to be there and are there in spirit too. There's no doubt in my mind that even Miguel Shark Z, I think in here in the chat, he was mentioning about.
Oh, he was in here earlier. I know that.
Yeah. So maybe doing something. There's definitely going to be some sort of stream going on. I can almost guarantee that. It'll be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing I want to do in Vegas, I was speaking with Hex Cadet. He's the guy that put together the year-end special. He's not going to be there, but I told him I was going to take some videos and send them to him so he can have some material to include for next year's year-end wrap-up, because he said he was going to do another one.
Nice.
So I want to grab some video while I'm there for him for that specific purpose.
Oh, totally. And that's what I was going to say too, is like, even if, maybe I get just, one or two live streams that are just a few minutes here and there. I'll definitely, I've got a lot of equipment that I'll be posting after the fact, body cam and stuff like this, and just cameras on my phone that we can use for that as well too. So yeah, man, that'll be awesome to, see you in Vegas and see everyone else there. It's going to be a little bit over a month from now, like a month and a week and a half-ish, something like that. Yep. And man, appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I know we've been on Discourse Syndicate before a handful of times, but sometimes it's just like, that's what I really liked about Joe Hexotic stream, was that, his was a lot more like personal and stuff like that on like their journeys and whatnot. But I like just in general being able to have like a fireside chat or just a chat with someone else where you can, hear about their story a little bit more. Cause, sometimes with more people, you might not have that opportunity, but it's always nice to, hear your story officially. And we'll definitely have to make it happen again soon.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on. This has been a very wonderful opportunity, and I definitely look forward to doing it again.
Cool, man. Yeah. Thank you, Tim. And I'll see you next time.
All right. See you, Bran.
Okay, everyone. So I do have Tim. I have his information in the chat. So just go to the description below. Let me post it in StreamYard once again, just so everyone can see it. It's twitter.com. Let me go back. Twitter.com/TBDUNAMIS. So that's his Twitter. If you're not following him yet, go over and give him a follow. And thanks, Tim, for being there. For doing the stream. Really appreciate that. And yeah, man, we'll have to make it happen again sometime soon. And I'm excited for Vegas, excited for all the streams that we do together. We got PulseChain. That's obviously really exciting. It's cool to see what changes Pulse can do that maybe Ethereum had wanted to do, but hasn't been able to do yet. Someone like Richard is definitely, he's got the funding, he's got the intellect, he's got the people that are, part of the movement that want to see SciVive work. They want to see PulseChain work. They want to, develop on stuff that are going to be part of the new ecosystem. So that's pretty much all I got. Thanks everyone for tuning in. The last thing I'll just cover real quick is just a share screen real quick here. The price of Hex is doing quite well. I mean, we're at like 5 pennies, we're sitting at 5 pennies, pretty solid. When we just go to, and let me get all these damn lines out of the screen. Sorry about that. But when when we zoom out just a smidge, right, and we just see this is where Hex was at big payday, and it's so cool to see the people that saw the same vision that Richard could see, and they didn't listen to the FUD, but instead they doubled down and they did their own research, right? Like Tim had mentioned, he feels lucky to have always been a nerd, quote unquote, or have always been interested in technology. And it's cool for a lot of us that the opportunity has brought us to HEX and has brought us here so far. So for a lot of the people that might not have been in HEX on day one or didn't get in early, you wished Richard could have done HEX all over again, or you could have rewound time and been back there. Pulse is, in my opinion, PulseChain is that opportunity. It's something that I always said, like I mentioned, that 1 or 2 pennies was like a dream come true. And I always talked with the other guys in HEX, like, man, if Richard ever does another cryptocurrency, you bet I'm going to have, my eggs in that basket, and that I'm going to, bet on that jockey as well. And so that is what's happening. It's really exciting. And this fork is going to be a lot bigger of a deal than we can even imagine or think right now. And so, yeah, thank you everyone for being here, for liking the video. We're almost at 1,000 likes, by the way. We're at like 835 likes. So shout out to everyone there. I'll just say goodbye to the chat real quick. Let's see. We got Chuck Ray, Piston Broke. Let's see. Thanks again, Timothy Benjamin. Billy Bob says, thanks for your hard work, guys. Yeah, of course. Thank you. It was awesome to meet Tim on a one-on-one today. And like I said, I've streamed with him with RG3 before. And at the end of the day, it's like every single Hexican that I've met, whether it's, you don't see their face or you just hear them behind an audio, like the PulseChain Telegram. There's a lot of people that I haven't heard of before, but I hear them and it's like, holy shnikes, we got a smart group of cookies here. We got a lot of people that really know what they're talking about, and they are willing to sacrifice as a political statement, and it's going to be history made once again. So shout out to Archie, Access Alive. Yeah, it was a great interview and stream with him, and yeah, it's interesting how that works itself out, where it feels like you're at the right time and place, right? Marcavelli. Let's see who else we got. Benny Bilzerian. Hope to see you in Vegas, my friend. I know you'll be having a good time there. Let's see. And yeah, I think that's about everyone. So, yep, thanks again, everyone. Let's see. Dan, it's still affordable even at a nickel. It's so true, guys. And like I said, as someone that's been there since day one and been there early, and yeah, you had 1 Ethereum, and great, it got you 1 million hex, but it wasn't really worth a whole bunch back then, right? Pennies was imminent, and now it's like, okay, dollars is really imminent as well. So when we reach that threshold, just you don't want to have like the hindsight bias or hindsight regret, where it's like, man, I thought it was going to dip down a little bit, and I didn't accumulate. And so anyways, that's pretty much all I got. PulseChain is going to be awesome. If you have any ERC20 token or you have HEX, it's going to be copied over. The liquid HEX is going to be copied over. The staked HEX is going to be copied over, and it's going to be a fork of Ethereum, and it's going to be great. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Hextoshi. Look forward to seeing you there, man. Says, great job. Steph is in the live Pulse chat. Yeah, so let me end the stream. Let me just tell you where you can go to the live chat. Okay, if you're not at the t.me/PulseChain Telegram audio chat, you need to be. It's super exciting, and I'll be there now.